Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are going on an absolutely incredible journey. We're diving deep into rivers, which are, quite literally, nature's flowing lifelines. I want you to just imagine a single, tiny drop of water starting way high up in the freezing, snowy peaks. Well, we're going to follow that exact drop all the way down to the vast ocean. And as you'll see, during its journey, a river completely transforms the landscape and supports life everywhere it goes.
So, what exactly is a river? Basically, it's a massive, natural stream of fresh water constantly flowing across the Earth's surface. And as it moves, it's literally reshaping the land beneath it. Plus, it brings life to the plants, animals, and communities it passes along the way. Every river has a distinct beginning and an end. It's just this incredibly powerful force of nature that connects the highest mountain peaks straight to the deep sea.
Think of a river's layout kind of like a giant road map with four main stops. First, it starts at the source, usually hidden high up in the mountains. Next, you have tributaries. These are smaller streams that join in and basically pump more water into the system. All of that water flows into the main river, which is the largest, widest section of the whole network. And finally, after traveling who knows how many miles, it hits the mouth, where the river finally empties out into a lake or the ocean. Now, you might be wondering, where does all this rushing water actually come from? Well, there are a few key sources. First off, rainwater washes over hills and gathers into streams. Then, high up in the mountains, you've got melting snow and these ancient icy glaciers slowly releasing fresh water. And actually, sometimes water travels completely hidden underground. It weaves through the soil and rocks until it eventually bubbles right up to the surface as a spring, feeding directly into the river.
A river's personality completely changes depending on its terrain. Take mountain rivers. They're rushing down super steep slopes. The water is freezing, it's moving incredibly fast, and it's violently crashing over rocks and down small waterfalls. But when that same river reaches flatland, it becomes a plain river. The whole vibe changes. The water slows way down, spreads out, and creates these wide, gentle, winding curves called meanders as it slowly travels across the green landscape.
Now, mountains seem totally invincible, right? Like solid, unbreakable rock. But honestly, fast-moving water is unbelievably strong. Over millions of years, that rushing water just keeps crashing into the rocks day after day. And this constant, relentless action slowly wears down even the absolute hardest stones on Earth. The water literally carves massive, deep valleys straight into the mountainside. It really goes to show just how much power a fast-moving river actually holds.
So, a river is constantly on the clock. It's kind of like a giant natural dump truck pulling three massive jobs: erosion, transportation, and deposition. Just like a heavy-duty truck, the river loads up on dirt and rocks, drives all that material miles downstream, and then finally unloads it. This non-stop, three-step process is literally how rivers completely reshape the world around us. Let's dive into that first job, the loading phase, which we call erosion. This happens when the sheer force of the fast water wears down solid rock and soil. The rushing river actually picks up loose stones and hurls them against the riverbed. So a massive rock gets smashed into a smaller boulder. Then that boulder breaks into pebbles, then gravel, then sand, and eventually sticky clay. The river is literally chewing up the mountain to create its cargo.
All right, next up is the driving job, or transportation. Here, the river is acting just like a massive conveyor belt. The heavy, round pebbles are dragged and rolled right along the bottom of the riverbed, getting smoother and rounder every time they hit each other. Meanwhile, the lighter stuff, like fine sand and muddy clay, just floats freely in the current. And crazy enough, some minerals dissolve completely, traveling totally invisibly in the water. And that brings us to the final job, unloading or deposition. When the river finally leaves the steep mountains and hits the flat plains, it slows down. It's kind of like a hiker who's been carrying a heavy backpack all day. The river just loses its strength. It can't carry that heavy cargo anymore. So it starts dropping those smooth pebbles and larger grains of sand along its edges. And that is exactly how those beautiful sandy beaches get built right along the riverbanks.
Eventually, the river meets the sea, and at this point, it slows down almost completely. It loses all of its pushing power and drops the absolute finest sand it still has left. Over time, this sand piles up and builds entirely new islands right in the water's path. These islands actually force the river to split apart into branching channels. If you look at it from above, it looks exactly like a giant hand spreading its fingers out to reach into the ocean. That stunning hand-shaped network at the river's mouth, that's what we call a delta. And the soft mud that gets dropped there is absolutely packed with rich minerals the river gathered during its long journey. It creates some of the most fertile, nutrient-rich soil on the entire planet. Thousands of years ago, early humans figured this out and built their very first homes right on these deltas. It was literally the perfect place to grow food and build thriving cities. So stepping back and looking at the whole shebang, it is so clear why rivers are truly nature's flowing lifelines. I mean, they provide pretty much everything required for life. They give us fresh drinking water, the sheer force of the current generates clean hydroelectric power, they give farmers the water needed to grow our food, and on top of all that, they provide vital habitats for countless animals, tying the snowy peaks to the ocean in one beautiful ribbon of life. Because they do so much heavy lifting for us, it is absolutely crucial that we protect these essential ecosystems. And the steps we need to take are simple, but they're huge. We can't litter, we have to stop pollution from poisoning the water supply, we need to save the trees that actually keep the riverbanks from collapsing, and of course, we've got to use our water wisely at home. If we keep our rivers healthy, we're basically guaranteeing a healthy planet for our future. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. Water feels so soft when it just slips through your fingers, right? But with enough patience and time, that exact same water has the unbelievable power to completely carve down giant mountains and build entirely new lands from scratch. It really makes you wonder, what other quiet, hidden forces in nature are slowly changing the world right beneath our feet?